Good morning, everyone, and welcome back. We are now doing the gold sponsor tier sessions, and we've got an excellent lineup for all of you here. And so this next one that we have here, this is going to be with Carbyne. Thank you so very much for being a gold sponsor. And heading up this discussion is going to be Rob Clark. He's an alliance executive with Carbyne, but also joining him is Ashley Swilling, 911 market specialist with Central Square Technologies, as well as Jonathan Mitchell, sales director with also Central Square Technologies. And they're going to be doing a session called Is Live CAD the Future of Dispatch? Thank you very much for joining us, everyone, and take it away.
Thank you, sir. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to be here with all these fine attendees today. First and foremost, thank you to everybody in the first responder community for all you do. For without you, there is no us. First and foremost, future of dispatching. We like to look at this as a really innovative session. So what what we're going to be discussing here is how are Carbyne and Central Square respectively viewing the market? What do we see as the future of dispatch? But really, as Ricardo had said, what is the live dispatch? And so you'll see a lot of live and real time, all those buzz terms and all that. But what is it that we're really looking at here? And I think with my colleagues here, we want to have a discussion really on what is it that we see collectively from not just historical, but really what trends. What are the trends that are driving us to be in this state of real-time situation? So ask Jonathan. I mean, Jonathan, first and foremost, let's discuss the partnership between the companies. In your perspective, what is it that Central Square is looking to achieve? I know there's a lot of change going on. There's a lot of focus. We're seeing kind of a resurgence in the market in a couple of areas. What is it that Central Square saw as I'm not going to say the reason between Carbyne, but what was the synergy that you all saw?
Yeah, that's really one of the fundamental things that we try and ask ourselves every day, Rob, is how can Central Square best serve the first responder and public safety market? And what you see on the screen here are some real life examples of the types of incidents that have been happening for years. And for those of you who don't know Central Square, we were formed 3 years ago when some of the biggest players in the computer-aided dispatch market merged and became a single company. And independently, we, as separate companies, are trying to solve these problems. Now we have to look at this on a more broad scale, since about 3 out of 4 public safety officials today in America are using one of the Central Square brands. So we realize we're in a unique position to try and bring something more than just after the fact dispatching and more than just predefined response plans or run cards to first responder resources. So what we recognize is there are events, whether it's a fight at a beach in a public setting that escalates to somebody pulling a gun and then running away from the scene. Maybe a flood event where you've got stranded people on the roof of their building and they're trying to get resources to respond, and maybe the resources that can actually get to those people aren't necessarily traditional first responders, or something as horrific as a home invasion in progress. We know that there are things that we need better visibility on, and it can't just be data that comes from Annie Alley or data feeds that come from the phone company, and even text messaging, which is an integral part of next gen. We knew it was just the starting point of being able to have better collaboration between the emergency caller and the first responders, not only sitting at the desk in the 911 center, but ultimately out in the field that are going to be the ones that are on scene. So realizing that there were some gaps in that communication and in that relationship, we wanted to make sure that we found a partner like Carbyne, and we're really excited to share with you the tools that they bring to the table that, in conjunction with our computer-aided dispatch and 911 solutions, I think are really revolutionary.
And it's a great point, and I think one of the things that we've certainly seen from a Carbyne perspective is exactly that. It's we're not the embedded base. We look at the innovations aspect. We look at how do you make things agile. And what was very attractive to us was exactly what Jonathan just said, is Central Square really is thinking outside the box. Central Square is really looking at now from you've got this conglomerate. There's so much expertise, there's so much experience in this industry. focusing it, putting it forward, I'm not going to say it's a weapon, but it's extremely powerful for the industry. First and foremost, because you got a company out here that has been leading the charge for so long, but they're really truly looking to innovate and really take the platforms that they have that their customers have invested in and give them more. And so I think what's important, at least from a Carbyne perspective, is having a partner like Central Square where you're really truly looking to make a difference, making impact in the industry, and not just thinking, we're not, and I think this is the interesting part of how we're looking at live CAD or CAD live or whatever we may want to call it, but it is a live environment. And that is, how do you bring all this data, how this stuff, and we've talked about it for years. And Jonathan, I'd love to get your perspective on it too, and Ashley as well, on interoperability, bringing data from different systems in, but just having to take all that and the interfaces. And there's already so much on the plate of any call taker, any dispatcher, any first line first responder. How do we need to bring that in a logical format rather than let's just flood the system. And so I think what we've seen and what Carbyne has been looking at is taking the real-time data, but on the terms of the customer, on the terms of the PSAP, because we can certainly, from a vendor side, think we've got all these great tools, we have capabilities, we're going to bring this to you. But if we're not bringing it to the industry and shaping it so that that data is actionable, so that those feeds are actionable, so that this live environment that is being played out is not accessible to those that need it, then we fail. So I think what you'll see here is what Carbyne and Central Square are doing is you're going to see Carbyne and the Central Square platforms, we're taking it and bringing the power from the public and any source devices into and through the enterprise ecosystem. And so I think what's interesting to me is not just the alliance, not just what we're doing as an industry, but what changed last year. What trends did we see particularly in the last year that drove us here? And I think what was instrumental is seeing more companies working together. I think Jonathan and Ashley, what would you say from a trends perspective that Central Square is seeing? What are you hearing from your clients of, we need more, we need this, we need that? I mean, are you seeing the trends shifting to additional data, agility?
Yeah, I'll start, and then Ashley, I want to obviously get your input as well. But one of the things that we've seen just in the last 2 years is a desire to have more sensor data and live streaming information coming into a single location. So whether that's cameras that are on your courthouse or even just street cameras that you have access to, and maybe you build a real-time crime center or a strategic decision support center where camera feeds are part of that, shot spotter or other gunshot detection systems feeding into that same one location place, or even other types of sensor information that the city or county has embedded in different places to just have a holistic overarching view of a community. But there's still this gap, and that gap is when you've got an incident unfolding in real time, how confident are you that your telecommunicators have the exact location information of that caller, and that they have the most up-to-date information that they can share with the first responders? So that's one of the unique challenges that we see as an area where we didn't have a good solution for that. Ashley, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think just to add on to that, I think ultimately everybody's goal with all the happenings over the past couple of years has been the importance of having that real-time data available at their fingertips, and having it available not only in like the Annie Alley feeds and such, but also being able to actually see what's going on in these everyday situations. So, so we have these major events and stuff, but also the things that are, I come from a PSAP, and so these technologies coming together, I thought, like, how would this have helped me when I was sitting in that seat? So the calls for the armed person being for a home invasion, or even a childbirth situation. So being able to truly streamline all these tools that we bring together for for the industry, I think is very important, and that's what they're wanting to see instead of to go to multiple applications. Just are us being able to come together and bring those tools together for them in a much more digestible manner.
That's, it's a great point. I mean, you keyed in on something there. The additional, without having, real estate. Let's look at the real estate factor. Precious real estate in any PSAP, and we've been collectively having to bring so much information, looking at this information, things that changed last year during the pandemic. What is it that you're going to use? How is this data, and what are PSAPs being looked to answer nowadays? It's overload. So what we've analyzed and what we've looked at and what we've seen together and what Carbyne is seeing is we're not in this to make it complicated on the client. We're in this to make it seamless, so that if you've already invested in a platform, you should be able to leverage that platform for these next generation capabilities. And I say next generation in quotes because next gen, it really is an evolving aspect. It is something that's always moving. And our next generation today is a lot different than the next generation tomorrow. So we have to keep this in context. But leveraging your investments, leveraging a platform, and really getting to the crux of any incident management, and that is into the dispatch. We have to bring the data as seamless and fluid into the dispatch sequence as possible, so that as that intelligent response is being managed, is playing out, as people are coming in, then they have the ability to get all this data and this information that's coming by way of Carbyne from the public. And so what we look at the Carbyne side is being able to empower the citizen. The citizens shouldn't have to, pre-install an app. They have an expectation. So the public now has an expectation. And I think this is the same things that are the realities that have not just occurred over the last few years, but have really amplified in the last year or less. And that is, they have an expectation to be able to provide information. They want to help, whether we want it or not, whether public safety wants it, that data is there. We need to be able to take that in, ingest it, and then manage it according to the rules, the operational protocols of the center. Now, if we take a pause right there, what's the information that's most critical? As Jonathan and Ashley were saying, is location, any supplementary, but video. Video has become such a prominent force in our world, particularly since COVID. I think a lot of people got used to telemedicine. We got used to looking at cameras and the desensitization to an extent from looking at a camera, just as part of work. Now, that doesn't mean from an incident type, but you look at that and you say, all right, I'm now used to seeing video. Now I have a tool. Where does that tool best fit is the better question. So with Carbyne, what we're taking is through our Universe platform, and it really is, it's a SaaS, it's a software as a service suite, where you have the ability to grab this information from the public and provide real-time in-state next-gen 911 functionality directly into the PSAP and through the CAD. And so what we look at is live CAD. What does that mean? It means you've got a CAD system that's going to be your crux, it's your public safety information management framework that says anything coming in, we have to take that. But the live aspect of it is you've got live data, and there's not a lot of logical ways to manage that. So taking that live data into a Central Square CAD ecosystem is going to allow for a number of things. One is the situational awareness, but you've got a responder safety aspect. So, to Jonathan, we look and we talk about the term, live CAD. How do you see? What else do you see from the Central Square side and having the Carbyne Universe platform? What is that? What is that solving? What challenge do you see that solving?
Got just a little bit of audio problem, but I think I captured the essence of the question. One of the interesting things about CAD is there is right now an expectation that what's essential is what's being logged in the video or in the voice recorder, and then what's being typed by the call taker or the dispatcher that should be getting shared out to the mobile unit. So obviously things like the address and address location accuracy are of prime importance, because of course your responders need to know exactly where they're going. And that can change, as we know. So that first live component is location accuracy. Well, we all know what a challenge it has been to get the phone companies to agree to even just good data that is XY coordinates. So now you start introducing things like Z coordinates, and of course there's recent legislative changes that are going to demand that phone companies send that as well. So that's a huge boon for the industry. But location accuracy is only useful up to a certain point, and then the information that is changing in real time at the event becomes far more critical. And it's a sort of thing where even the fastest typer is only going to be able to put in so much information. And I know there's some 911 centers that are now toying with the idea of sharing the voice component of the call in a live situation, which I think can be an excellent tool. But there again, if you think about listening to a radio program versus watching something on TV, there is so much more information available through even just a still image, but especially if it's something that can be shared through video, and that video stream, that live feed from the caller is something that dispatchers can see, and ultimately the dispatchers can push out to the vehicles or out to a handheld device that is being used by the first responder. That's the gold standard, or at least that's what we think will become the gold standard for the live information sharing that is possible right now through the Carbyne and Central Square partnership.
Yeah, and I think we look at things like responder safety. I mean, Ashley, you come from the PSAP world. If you were able to look at live information, what are there situations, or is there an aspect of the unknown? And that's why we look at kind of the fear of the unknown. There was originally the fear of the video, but there's also the fear of I can't see what this person's seeing, and there's the mindset overcoming. What is it that they're seeing, and is it really as bad? So, Ashley, how do you see things like video being an empowering tool?
Well, I feel like first that people are still afraid to have this coming into their center, right? So, I mean, we in the PSAP need to make sure that we're still taking care of our people, but also I think with Universe, it's important to point out like the fact that it makes it an option, right? So if I want to see it, I can see it. And if not, that's okay. I don't have to. But as far as how I can think of many instances of situations when I was in the scene where it really would have helped me from, just specific examples of a bank robbery that we have, and just trying to get that description, because usually like when people have their adrenaline going and stuff, the information that you get isn't necessarily as accurate as what they're actually seeing. So being able to have that video to see, what kind of cards are involved, get a better description of a suspect, or if it's a medical emergency, get a better idea of what the status is of the patient, so that you can relay that information or even share that information with the responders out in the field before they arrive on scene, and just better preparing them, and then making sure that, me as a telecommunicator, I'm giving them the right guidance.
That's great. That's a great point. And to your point, a great example just now is you've got an audio. So if there's an audio issue, am I missing something in translation? So you have the ability. It's just another tool that says I can grab information from the caller, from the public, or from the scene, and bring that in as part of the incident management process. Now, how is this done? People would say, okay, how is this done, without violating, somebody's privacy? So, as most people have seen before, and we've done different innovation summits. From Carbyne's perspective, what we have is we have a patented process on how do you engage a client, how do you engage the public from the public safety answering point. So what we are not doing, we are not leaving an app behind on anybody's phone. It's a live session. So what you're able to do is you tie this just like a workflow. So what's great is you're giving this as the call taker, the caller's perspective. So if they had a chat session going, so if there's a button click, what they're looking at, you can have them on live video. You can say, all right, great. Maybe we don't want live video in our center, but we want it plumbed over our real-time crime center so that it's evidentiary, or so that we can look at it. Great. What you need is the means to communicate with that person that's calling, so that you have the information and use that information as you desire. But nothing gets left on the caller's phone. And it's set up specifically so that it comes through just like the call, and the information flows into the CAD just like it should, bringing that incident management capability. And we like to say this, it's kind of it's triangulation, but it's closing the circle. Is one of the things that we've had for a long time is we've had the ability to communicate from the public to the PSAP to the responder, but it's that last triangulation on the left side. If I were a geometry major, I could probably name what that's called. But it's that last angle that's the responder back to the citizen. It's that transparency aspect that we now hear so much about. It's that ability to convey and communicate from the scene to that responder. And as we've mentioned earlier, they're already starting to share audio. Now that's from the caller to the responder. But how do we share that additional information? You have to do that in a managed sequence. So what Carbyne's able to power is, it's powered by Carbyne. And so you have a CAD environment that is taking this information, but what we're looking to do and what we're doing is taking that information and making it as part of an ADR with any sequence on a dispatch. So as those operational protocols say, all right, if there's to Ashley's point, if there's a bank robbery, how do we use this tool? Now, you're not going to necessarily use the Carbyne tool for everything from a video perspective, from an imaging perspective, but what types of incidents do you need that maybe it's a medical and maybe we have somebody on scene and maybe that person's not, we've heard different clips over the time, but maybe somebody's able to put an eye up to this as, all right, I can see it. It's a person doing it, 16 years old. No, hands are in the wrong place. So you can make those critical real-time adjustments. But it's bringing that total flow back to the public from the person that's coming to the scene. Now, I like to say, I like to say also, what else are we looking to do? So what is it that from a responder safety, and this is really kind of where we see the biggest power, the biggest advantage, and really from public safety professionals, the responders are putting their lives on the line. You're going out to a scene. You're going out to a situation. You may not have the tool. You may not have all the total view. So, Jonathan, Ashley, where have you seen? Look at the first response. So, if we look at responder safety, what is it that we're doing together that's going to have an impact in that?
Well, the collaboration and the as needed aspect of how this was designed, I think, is a critical piece. This isn't something that you would expect people to have to download ahead of time. This isn't something that requires a massive community advertisement outreach program to get maybe 10% of the population to be aware of it. And this isn't something that you would have to pre-install and have running on every single device where it might be used. So one of the keys, and I think this is true for a lot of what we are going to see in the near future when it comes to live dispatch and just policing in general, that you'll have the tool available when you need it and only when you need it, and it will be easy to use for everyone that you want to have be able to contribute to it. So when it comes to true public safety for first responders and being able to kind of move the needle in a meaningful way, the ease of use is sort of a foundational component of that end result. If it's something that anyone can use, if it's instantaneous, if it's as needed, and if it's an on-demand accessible component, then you're going to have the highest adoption rate. So that's one of the things that is so great about this tool, is that it's engineered so that only those people who you want to have be able to have this capability would be the ones that a dispatcher can instantly request do so. And then that can be fed right out into the first responders' devices. So I think that's one of the key components of this, is just the ease of use and how that will affect the ability for people to actually use it as a tool.
Oh, for sure. And I think, what's interesting too is we never, back to the original three, we all see the mega, tsunami, you've got, we all know the massive events, but it's those everyday occurrences where these tools are so valuable. What did we learn? We learned through the pandemic, through COVID, that the power of Universe can help with the triage and actually mitigating and managing ingress calls, so that you say, all right, is this an emergency? What's the nature of the call? How's the call coming in? Is it an overload because we have a panic situation? But if calls are getting flooded, how are we going to use tools and technology to migrate into the future. So we look at these and we say, okay, you've got eyes on scene. Who's the specialist? And I think this is the interesting, this is one of the interesting discussions that I see going on with the industry is now I have other responders, or as we call the second responders. We have other individuals that are being pulled into the process. What tools do they need? When we look at the medical aspect, and I know that's been picked on a lot in the last, 12 months because we dealt with a health crisis. But if we look at the medical aspect, we learned so much about, volunteers. We learned the nursing systems, nurse navigation. We've got different, medical professionals out there that were willing to help. We've got paramedics. How do you get the information from the certain types of calls to them so that they can actually take it and be part of that triaging? And so what we're able to do is have a telemed, to an extent, it was a telemedicine capability where they're able to make that initial call for help, calls coming in, they analyze it. All right, based on the person's voice, based on the data that they're giving us, and based on what the additional pieces that we've been trying to identify so that we can get very surgical rather than paint a broad brush, Carbyne came up with a questionnaire where they were able to analyze based on the types of calls, if it was a COVID call or if it's somebody that was reporting respiratory issues, trying to vet out, were they anywhere? Did they go someplace specific? Have they been in contact in a certain area? But so that as part of that call and their understanding, they can make a note that says, okay, this person has a history of asthma. They don't have the symptoms. They appear to be having high anxiety over this. Let's bring it to a paramedic. Let's bring it to a specialist. So that specialist was then able to take it, manage that incident with that individual, but brought the key was that person was brought into the call as part of the standard call flow. So what we have to look at is standard call flows are great, but there's not that many different calling patterns that are going to come in. It's really the dispatch side of how do we bring these different responders in and what do they need to see? So if we look at the impact on responder safety is one thing. If we look on the impact of being able to bridge the gap of some of this decentralization or alternative dispatch, we talk about mental health crises. That's a great example. So how do we bring all of those, all those agencies together? They all need data, they all need tools, but they're all going to be centralized on a dispatch framework. So I think that's a very important thing to remember. And that says, if we look at that future state, where are we getting to? We've got to be able to handle this in a single call flow that follows the standards from NENA, that handles all the ingress, that allows any agency to migrate to an environment. And we're proponents of cloud, obviously, because cloud, what we learned, particularly in the last year, and I think as any agency on this session would say, is nobody prepared for a full bug out. Nobody prepared. We as a country, this just wasn't something in our playbook. We hadn't dealt with this. But what cloud was able to do was take us and move us to a state where it didn't matter where you were. So you have the ability to bug out and truly bug out, saying, okay, if all lines are cut, how do I do this? Those are the types of situations. Those are the type of situations where cloud becomes a must-have. It's no longer a nice-to-have, and it's a must-have for a number of areas. But if you look at if we look at bridging, and this is a topic I think is very, very early stage, but it needs to be a very serious discussion in our industry. The alternative dispatch. How do we see this? And I'm very interested to see from a Central Squares perspective, how are you all looking at bridging the different dispatch? You're already dealing with EMS, fire, police. To you all, does mental health, crisis counseling, does that become a natural ingress for you as you're already dealing with public safety and public admin, or is it a stretch?
Yeah, there's going to be some interesting things that will change, that we'll just observe as we try and contribute to as well. But I think the idea of alternative dispatch is one that different cities are tackling a little bit differently. But yeah, because we have the tools on both the public safety side and the public administration side, I think we're well positioned to help the cities and counties that rely on us right now as they expand how they are responding to the types of emergencies and the types of incidents that are occurring in their communities. But yeah, it'll be very interesting to see if there are more collaboration and a tighter connection between not just non-standard health care dispatch, like a psychiatrist or psychologist might be called out on scene, but even in things like weather events, being able to share that information where there's downed power lines instantaneously with an apparatus that is a part of the fleet from the utilities company. So we see that this collaboration really can become quite broad depending on what the cities and counties want that are using any of our tools. Ashley, you may have some other insight in what you've seen and what you're hearing from your MENA partnerships.
No, I mean, I think just to add on to that, like depending on how things are handled, obviously within the PSAP, it's thinking outside of that box as far as having, in regards to mental health, having those relationships with crisis hotlines, different things like that, and just making them a part of maybe a standard protocol when they need to be incorporated. So I know within CAD systems, you can set up questionnaires based on the nature code. So if it's something like that, and then you can set up to where here I need to identify this is the point when I need to contact that outside resource. And so, and that's for a multitude of different scenarios. Like Jonathan said, even with something, contacting public works or utility companies.
Well, it's just, I mean, the utility one, it's a great example. You look at the power of video. I mean, then we've had, from Carbyne's perspective, we've had a number of just so many different use cases that we've heard from clients, but just very unique utilization. But to power companies. So I live in an area where we get a lot of storms and we get a lot of trees that get knocked down. And I remember back to when I first moved to the Mid-Atlantic, and they had this thing called a derecho, and I had no clue what that was, and I don't ever want to go through that again. But you think, okay, power's out, line crew's out there. Somebody takes a look. Okay, I can call as Rob Clark. Hey, I'm calling. I'm not going to call 911. I'm just going to call the utility company. Utility company can now see, hey, can you turn this on? Great. I'm going to look at, oh my gosh, we've got a tree here, but we don't have it on the lines. We have something else. They can make a decision as to what's their response going to be. Do I send out a truck? Do I send out a bucket truck? Do I need both? Is this, what's my access to it? Oh, shoot, there's a fire. Now, how do I bring that view in? But it's that collaboration of being able to bring in, regardless of where the calls, let's say the ingress was, whether it came in on a 10-digit number, maybe it came in on a 511, maybe it's on an 811, dial before you dig. But regardless of how it's dialed, and this to the whole point of Next Gen 911, regardless of your media or how you request, you need to be able to receive services. So what I see this being very unique and seeing the different use cases is there's no limit to an extent of where it could be used. I mean, we don't want to say, let's go out and bring things from a retail environment, but that's the whole promise of Next Gen. Everything on the left of this slide here is all that ingress information, the data, the feeds. It's all the stuff that from a standards perspective, we have to manage on how is that going to be brought through, how does it interoperate, all of that. But in the end state, when you're in the PSAP and you have that information, and there's a trust aspect that all the other information that's coming with I3, we're going to get there. But the pieces of info that you have now, and if you need it now, the key is you can get it now. So we want to make sure that there's the bridge that says, here's where you can go. But if you really want to take X, Y, and Z, sure. And I think a lot of it, and I hate to use the term systems integrator because it really is not a systems integration industry model. But what we're seeing is application integration. We're seeing data integration. So I think the mindset from what we're looking to accomplish here is different. It's utilization of the CAD platform to tie back into the routing schemas. How are you going to do? Maybe it comes from an ACD. Maybe you take it all the way back into the network from an ESRP, ECRF perspective. We can get all acronymed out until we're blue in the face. But the whole point is what we're doing is we're trying to account for everything into a common framework, but not just taking the common framework, putting the data and the tools where they're needed, rather than where a vendor thinks, hey, this is a great idea, we're gonna do it this way. just one little small protocol may throw a wrench in that. And so I think, what Carbyne's, our philosophy is, and I think, it'd be interesting to hear kind of where Central Square is today and where you all are seeing from a mission perspective. Our philosophy is we work with the client. We really believe in collaboration. We really believe in technical partnerships, because if we're not listening to the customer, not listening to your needs, and we're not adapting our platform, then we're failing the industry. And I'm not going to say it's a yeah, me too, but we're not in this to answer a call that's already been answered by a company like Central Square. Why would I become a CAD company? We've got plenty of those. So, and I think, Jonathan, I'd like to get your take just on what transition, where you've seen industry-wise in the last 3 to 4 years, from CAD being CAD and then the CAD to CAD. I know you've got a big background in CAD to CAD. Where do you see those trends going, and where are some of those challenges potentially solved with what else Central Square and Carbyne are doing?
It's interesting. Back in the late 90s, when I first got involved in the public safety technology space, there were some PSAPs that I would visit with that still had a magnetic board that they would move magnets that were identifying the units that were actually out and available, and they'd move them from one side of the magnet board to the other. They'd handwrite notes and punch it on essentially a time clock style timekeeping device, and then they'd keep these thick files of handwritten paper notes. And that was just back in the 90s. So it's been a transformative thing to watch the industry shift from that to what we have today. And I think that what we're going to see in the next just 10 years is going to eclipse what has taken us 20 years to do in terms of evolution of technology. So within Central Square, we have found that the trends that have been occurring with consolidation specifically, there's been a handful of states that have actually mandated that the public safety community get down to less than a certain number of PSAPs that cover even larger areas. And so that has led to physical consolidation of these centers into single buildings. Oftentimes, even if they don't do a physical consolidation, there's a technical consolidation where different PSAPs or different EOCs will get on the same software platform and everyone will be dispatched by the same common platform. Then they've got some backup and failover capabilities sort of built in to that environment. As Rob mentioned, being able to have things either in the cloud or on premise with a cloud backup, and that hybrid environment is something that a trend that we've seen more and more requests come in on. And then in terms of CAD to CAD collaboration, that's, I hope, a very important and still emerging trend, where the ideal is that no matter what system you use, no matter where your neighbor's center is located, if there is value in seeing their incident information or seeing their unit information directly in your CAD system, that collaboration and that information sharing should occur. So that's one of the tools that Central Square offers to our clients, and even to non-Central Square clients, is the ability to share real-time incident and real-time unit information back and forth. It could be as simple as a request that a dispatcher from one neighbor asks of their other neighbor, and then as soon as that request is granted, that other neighbor just replicates the call in their system. Or it could be as robust as, I want to be able to take ownership of a neighboring agency's unit, and we've worked out ahead of time through MOUs or automatic aid agreements or whatever interlocal agreement is required. We've worked out the methodology for that, and then the technology can be used to just facilitate what we've agreed upon ahead of time. So there's really some powerful information sharing tools that are available that many customers are using around the country right now. And this ability to then take it to the next level and be able to share things like photographs or even like a live video stream across CAD systems is something that we see as an evolution in that progress of information sharing.
No, thanks. And it's just, I know from an expertise perspective, you've seen so many different trends, you've seen so many different challenges. And I think what's key is, we look at something like a Carbyne's definitely, and we're not a, multi, $100 million, $100 billion company, but we are a growing company. We're an agile company, and we are a technology provider. But what we've also seen is we have, core competency expertise in our organization, but our key was working with partners to make the world, and really we believe this, to make the world a safer place. And just as a, shameless promotion here, of course, we have technology partners that are trusted. We're very large. We are a cloud native provider. So what we consciously decided was we needed to move to the cloud. Our founders and co-founders' vision was we've got to go cloud, but we've got to be able to do something that's not been done yet. And so a big part of what Carbyne's done is being able to put it in the cloud gave us the ability to bring to clients a lower cost of ownership, flexibility, ability to actually bring new releases. We had to slow down our release cycle because our industry here just wasn't used to the frequency. We're just bam, bam, bam. The capabilities and speed, what becomes so more efficient in cloud, you really start to realize and you go, wow, why didn't we do this a long time ago? Well, same reason we've talked a long time about analog versus IP, moving from an analog environment to an IP environment. It's readiness and adoption. But what's interesting, what's most important too, is, like I said, in the last year, we as a nation, we as a world learned that we have to change the way that we take data, that we respond, and we have to change the way that we're giving information to public safety and to other agencies, because we cannot have the overload. We can't afford that. So it's really, how do we take this, and I say it's a decentralization, but we call it, overseas, they may call it a control room. They may have a big control center. But in the US, we have this decentralized control. We have a police department. They may have to talk to a fire department with ambulance services, poison control. And at some point in time, that may be their control center. So it's a scenario-driven control room environment that we have in the US. And that's what the promise of bringing an EZNet in. It brings in so much power, because then you're distributing. But you bring in the cloud, you have the ability to bug out, you have business continuity, but you have tools like you have a voice path. Most people wouldn't think that, but you can have a voice path as a secondary backup through cloud, through our platform. So what the key here is, Carbyne's been doing this for a long time. We've got 8 patents and growing. And we're recording over, you look at 1 million minutes of 911 video on the annual basis. That's a lot of information. But we are a location services provider as well. So when you look at the previous slide here, there's one note in the top right, Georgia Department of Transportation. That's not a 911 center. But you know what? They're working with state police on a regular basis, because state police actually is working to find location information on traffic, on collisions by way of them, because they Carbyne it. So they'll actually Carbyne, and it's on 511. So what we're already doing is we're making adaptations on how do we utilize our platform, how do we bring our platform to clients, and what other clients can use it. And this is why it's such a nice marriage when you're working with different partners like a Central Square, where you've got a public sector. It's not just public safety. Yes, we are focused on public safety. That is our mission. That's our expertise. But public sector, if we can serve that market share as well, fantastic. Because at the end of the day, if we're not able to serve the growing needs and the changing dynamics of the industry, then all it's going to do is put more work and FUD and data that just keeps thrown at the system that's not being used. And God forbid that one of those data points could have come through or should have come through in a situation that meant life or death. And we've seen those, and it's some of the most rewarding things that you'll ever see, of course, is where it made a difference. But what's that immediate impact is, as we have up here, with what you're able to provide with Carbyne, from situational awareness from the scene, you've got a number of things. I'm not going to read the slide, but what you have is you have a solution. You have a solution that's going to satisfy the 2 most important constituents anywhere: the citizens and the responders. And both of them are commensurate. So you have responders that are also citizens, that they themselves may need help. But the expectation and the ability to serve the citizens today, much different than it was a year ago, and tremendously different than it was 10. So what we're looking to achieve here, and what we've been doing with clients, is bringing a citizen experience that brings transparency and allows them to say, look, if I don't have a confidence in my community, if I don't have a confidence level in my responders, why don't you turn the camera on? And that right there, you're building a bridge, and we're building a discussion, and it's a discussion that It's a very easy discussion to have because it says, we want to be able to serve you better. We want to be eyes and ears. You have eyes, you have ears. What is it that you can provide to us so that we can make the response process quicker, more accurate, and with an outcome that's much more positive? Because when we've seen in video, and we'll, as we wrap up, I'm going to play just as a 4-minute overview of, but what we have seen time and time again, when the utilization of video from the public comes in, PSAP is made aware of it, they're able to see it, and they're able to translate that back to the first responder as, here's the scene, here's where the individual is, I've got a stream coming right here. The outcome is non-fatality. In fact, there's usually not even a shot fired. So the outcome being less violent, peaceful resolution for all parties involved, we're not going to get a better outcome than that. But key is we have to do it now. The expectations are now. NG 911 now. We've been saying that as an industry for a long time. So let's bring it. And with that, I mentioned some success cases, and then I'll go to and ask my colleagues here for their comments as well. But when we look at some very interesting use cases, and this is just a spattering of them. Some very simple, back to that first page, the everyday aspects are the ones that come in most powerful. I want to focus on this bottom left because it was one of the most interesting things that I'd ever seen. And that was, there was a call that came in. So a woman was on the phone with her sister. Her sister lives in Largo, Florida. She's on the phone, her sister's in Arkansas. Her sister started having a seizure. Sister's on the phone, does not know who to call. So she looks up the number down in Largo, calls up Largo. Sister is not in Largo. So she calls Largo. Largo happens to have the Carbyne Universe installed. The girl could not talk, she couldn't chat. So what they were able to do was they sent the link for video to the woman on her cell. She hit that video link, accepted it. So we had her permission. She then just held the camera up. And with the call taker seeing that view, the call taker was able to analyze where she was and not only see that it was not in Largo, it was actually 2 cities over. And they were then able to say, all right, I can see it now. I even recognize the sign. So I'm looking at from this, they looked every angle, and they were able to zero in where she was just by having her aiming her camera. And so the power, and that's why I said the power of video can be extraordinary, because this woman was in Florida. She's on the phone with her sister in Arkansas. Her sister calls for help. In any other situation, that's probably not going to turn out really well. Another case example that we see a lot of is we're the largest location services provider outside of North America. We work with our partners, Rapid SOS, here in North America. But in Latin America, from the U.S.-Mexico border, we are providing location services across the Mexico border. And there have been times where there's migrants that are crossing in, and they'll dial for help. The 911, because it's a SIM card that's registered in Mexico, it goes back to the PSAP on that side, even when they're in U.S. territory. And so then the call says, okay, well, who's got jurisdiction on this? So what they're now able to do, and these are some of the projects that we're looking at and working with different partners and different client partners on, is bringing that, and they actually were able to bridge in the PSAP on the U.S. side, bring the exact coordinates, bring to them a location, and say they were then able to go out and find them immediately. So there's the lack of, we're able to zero in on a location. We're able to zero in on an incident much quicker and much more accurately on cross jurisdiction because of the visualization, because of just the basic capabilities where we're bringing the information in. The PSAP or the responder agency can see it. Hey, if they don't have that location, then somebody's going to provide it. And that's typically done where? In the CAD. So Jonathan, Ashley, before I turn on this video, I'd like, any other comments, closing statements that you all have.
Yeah, Dr. DeMar made some interesting comments about how communities should be having the conversations about these technologies, even if you're not ready to deploy any of the things that we've been talking about today. And one of the points I wanted to make is this is something that can run completely independent of your CAD system. So if you're using one of Central Square's multiple CAD products, great. There are some things that we can offer that are unique if you decide to go with the Carbyne solution, but you don't need to be using even Essential Square CAD to take advantage of a lot of the capabilities that we've been discussing here. So this is something that is not a heavy lift. It's not something that is going to require a brand new CAD system to take use of it or to take advantage of it. And I think that that's a really important point. You can deploy this on a minimally impactful basis to have maximum impact to your community.
And that's a great point. I mean, it really is 0 to 60 in 30 seconds. I mean, we say that, people say there's no way. Building the back end, once a client says we're ready to go, it's an installation. It is one of the quickest deployments that you'll see. But like you said, it's available today, and you can grab that situational awareness today. And seeing what we're going to be doing together tomorrow, in the future. I mean, there's some really exciting stuff coming between our organizations. So I just encourage you to keep an eye on us, follow us on LinkedIn, follow us on Twitter, Carbyne, Central Square Technologies. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and give it's a video. It's a quick 4-minute overview of what our platform is. And then with that, we'll leave the session open if there's any questions. And hopefully, Jonathan, please tell me if you can hear the audio through this, if you can't. Good?
Carbyne has created Universe with a sole purpose in mind, and that is to enable any call taker to fully immerse themselves into the incident, receive the right information as quickly as possible, in order to dispatch efficiently and with great confidence that they are providing the right response. Launching Universe. In a 911 center, Universe Auto Detect solution will automatically feed the caller's phone number and location to the screen, indicating an incoming session. A manual insertion of the number and activation of Universe is also available for admin calls or any other scenarios. Double-clicking the icon will open the user interface straight to the map. Once a call is received, the call taker has the ability to send text-based activation links to the caller's phone. At the moment the caller clicks on the links, a permission is granted to access their mobile location and initiate a rich data session, which includes video and chat. Advanced location capabilities. Universe's advanced mobile location capabilities are displayed on a Google map. As you can see, it can provide an extremely accurate location of up to 5 meters. In addition to that, the location information also provides the caller's address, latitude and longitude, elevation, and speed. Carbyne's location services are dynamic, and the caller location is automatically refreshed. Every couple of seconds, the green location icon on the map will show the new location of the caller, if the caller is on the move. A quick transition can be done from a map view to street view, and finally satellite view. The ability for a dispatcher to have such detailed visual of the caller's location dramatically increases the situational awareness of first responders, as they can see the main pathways to the house, surrounding areas, and more. Live video. The live video session is a patented technology of Carbyne. It enables a one-sided live video connection between the caller and call taker. As you can see in the video pane, the video is streamed in high quality and with 0 delay. The video pane also enables the ability to snapshot images. By clicking on the round icon, both caller and call takers can take images that are stored in Carbyne's data management platform, Events History. During a live session, the images snapped are captured on the chat pane. Instant verified chat. Transitioning to the chat, this tool has been powerful in saving endless lives. In many cases where the caller feels unsafe to verbally communicate, Carbyne's instant silent chat provides a safer communications platform. In addition, for the deaf and hard of hearing community, it bridges the gap they currently experience in dealing with 911. Incident conferencing. The Incident conferencing feature enables any Universe user with permission to passively view the UI of a session being managed by a different Universe user. For instance, if a 911 director wants to support a call taker, or if colleagues want to support each other, They can simply click the incident ID, and from that moment, they can have a live view of the person's screen operating the Universe session. This is extremely powerful when sharing a live view from an incident to law enforcement or EMS, as they can provide direct instructions even before arriving on site. Custom questionnaire. Developed during the peak of COVID-19 to support our clients, the COVID-19 questionnaire enables to set a preset of questions to serve as qualifiers for response. In addition, it enables the collection of data that can then be translated to visual heat maps showing density by class, symptoms, or any other parameters. The questionnaire is not restricted for COVID-19 related calls. For instance, it can be defined to qualify the type of incident, fire, medical, domestic violence, and more. Ultimately, allowing the Emergency Operations Director to have a strategic view of their operations.
So with that, I thank everybody for their time today. It's been wonderful. And Jonathan, Ashley, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate it. And with that, enjoy the rest of the session and definitely dare to be great.
Excellent. Thank you very, very much for the session. It looks like we lost Ashley there. She had to drop out. I don't know where she went there, but we're here. Thank you so much for all this information. Just watching all of it and thinking back of when I was in dispatch, it's like, whoa, there's so much more that, that is coming in. And, it makes me a little sad only because I wish I was in dispatch as well to play around with all of this and put it to use, because that was my love for 13 and a half years. I left a dispatch to work for, to become an industry partner, but also to, do everything that I'm doing right now. And it's just been, it's been excellent. It's been good to see all of this technology come out, and especially what you offer as well. And we've got Jeremy in here, and I just want to read this comment. I don't know if you saw it at all, but it says, even if PSAP ECC leadership has no immediate plans to implement new and emerging technologies like this, minimally, conversations should be happening about what the impact of these technologies will be. And it's so true. There's so much conversation that needs to happen, and take it by the horns and work with it. Embrace it.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
I was to say, absolutely. I mean, to do nothing, to dismiss or have no conversation whatsoever isn't an option. I mean, that sums it up perfectly.
Mm-hmm. Now, I do have one question for the both of you here, just going into the wrap up really quick. What I guess some advice coming from you on this end to those who are looking at new technology, who might be, kind of on the fence. Like, how do you let them know that, it's going to be okay? How do you approach that conversation?
Well, I think from Carbyne side, we are very much customer success oriented, and we have a customer success management team that's what they do. Their job is to work with the client so that they become accustomed to utilization of the technology. But first and foremost is, I'd say, trusting your partner, trusting your technology provider as a partner, because that's our job, is to get them there. I mean, Jonathan, what would you?
Yeah, I just add, this is different. This is not a forklift replacement of technology you already have that's going to take 18 months to implement. Like Rob said, you can go from 0 to 60 in 30 seconds. And that is a unique deployment model in this industry. And it's something that you don't have to fear.
Excellent. Well, thank you both very, very much once again. And thank you again to Carbyne for being a gold sponsor. And people, make sure to check them out. Go to the website, withinthetrenches.net/conference, and check out the sponsors and everything that they have to offer in their website as well. Thank you so very much. And we'll see you all in the next one.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate y'all.